We'll talk to director AJ Schnack and writer Michael Azerrad about the new documentary, Kurt Cobain About a Son, a fascinating look at the late Nirvana frontman.
In 1992 and 1993, music writer Michael Azerrad recorded more than 25 hours of interviews with Kurt Cobain as part of his research for a Nirvana biography called Come As You Are. Those interviews are now the basis of a new documentary called Kurt Cobain About a Son, directed by AJ Schnack. I'm joined right now by Michael and AJ. Welcome to The Sauce.
Thanks very much.
Nice to be here.
This film compiles my favorite things, movies and music. And it's just amazing to sit and listen to these interviews. Michael, how did you first get introduced to Kurt Cobain, and how did you get him to agree to do these interviews?
Well, the first time I met Kurt was I was doing a Rolling Stone cover story in early '92. It's the famous piece where he's wearing a T-shirt that said "Corporate magazines still suck."
Purple hair.
Yeah, funny colored hair and the whole bit. And I was kind of scared to meet him at first, but as soon as we met, we really hit it off. We had a lot in common, actually, even though he was, from this lumber town and I was this Northeast, college boy. But we had a lot of connections, and we really hit it off. And I think that article was the first one to really connect his, troubled childhood and all that craziness that he had growing up with the screaming and the roaring music and all that stuff. And I think he really liked my take. And then when the opportunity came up to do a book, he really wanted to do it with me, and it worked out really, really well. We just kept making these connections and had a really good, intimate, kind of bond.
It just sounds really cool. You learned so much about him. Now, how did you become, AJ, how did you become aware of the tapes and decide to make a film?
A few years ago, I made a movie about They Might Be Giants called Gigantic, and Michael was in that film, and we became friends, and we were talking about his days around Nirvana, and he told me that he had these audio tapes that were in a box in his apartment, and he hadn't listened to them in 10 years, and maybe someday he'd like to do something with them. And about a year afterwards, I came to him with the idea for this film, and hoping that he would trust me with this obviously precious thing, in his life.
Now, the documentary has got a very unique style. It's mostly just footage and photos, and there's really not anything of Nirvana in there. How'd you make that decision?
Well, I think it kind of came all at once when I was thinking about that I was only going to use Michael's interviews, and these only exist as audio interviews. So then you think, okay, well, what are the visuals? And there's a great movie called Koyaanisqatsi that people should go out and rent. It's a documentary from the early 80s, and it's all like these crazy visuals and time-lapse photography and rockets taking off and planes flying all over the place. And Philip Glass did this amazing score.
Yes.
And I wanted to make a movie that had some of those elements. It was a really visual film, and the notion of shooting in the beautiful, haunting Pacific Northwest of Kurt's life and hearing these interviews, I thought was a really compelling way to do it.
Yeah, haunting is a really good description for it. Not in a bad way. The footage of Aberdeen and Olympia and Seattle throughout. Now, did you just kind of, was it set up? How hard was it to set it up with the interview to what he was talking about? Because it seemed to be very meticulous.
Yeah, no, we planned it all out in advance. It was extremely storyboarded, and we went to the actual locations that Kurt is talking about. So when he is talking about the first house he ever lived in Aberdeen, and you see this place that's been completely trashed. It's the house he lived in, and it was actually boarded up, and a guy came down and took the boards off, and there'd been people living inside, and that's how we found it. And so when he's talking about, the hotel he worked at cleaning out fireplaces, it's the actual hotel. So we went to the real places, his dad's real mill, the bars he played in, places he lived, and try to give people a sense of what the world looked like from his perspective.
Now, I want to talk about the soundtrack, which is amazing. I've been listening to quite a bit of it. Michael, you said before we started that the soundtrack itself tells a story. How did you guys choose what songs go on it?
Well, the songs were chosen just from music that Kurt had mentioned in interviews and conversations with me and other people. So it's all stuff that we know he listened to. And it starts out with some really kind of more major label artists.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when he was younger, Kurt listened to bands like Kiss and Queen and Black Sabbath and the Beatles. These are bands that embraced their fame. Later on, he got into punk rock, and he got turned on to that idea that maybe fame wasn't where it's at. And so this soundtrack tells that story of Kurt's listening habits and how they affected his art and his music and the way he thought about his own career. And it's even that even just the CD is incredibly dramatic, I think.
And again, there's no Nirvana on there.
Right.
It's like a Kurt mixtape. It's like what he would put together to play for his friends, as close as we could get it.
That's a really good description.
I mean, I wanted to fit in somewhere, but not with the average kid. I mean, not with the popular kid at school. I wanted to fit in with the geeks, but the geeks were sub-geeks in Aberdeen. You know, they weren't the average geek. They weren't the type of kid who would listen to Devo. They were just usually deformed.
Sure, a lot of you out there know what that feels like. We're here with Michael Azerrad and AJ Schnack, the writer, well, interviewer and director of the film, the documentary Kurt Cobain About a Son. Now, Michael, in the interviews, Kurt talks a lot about his desire for privacy. So how'd you said connections, but how'd you really get him to open up?
Well, you know, at the time, he was in the tabloids a lot. People were speculating about his personal life and getting it really wrong. There was a Vanity Fair article that was used partly as evidence to help him lose custody of his baby, which is an incredibly traumatic thing for any parent.
Yeah.
So he just wanted something that would tell things as they actually were, and he trusted me to do that. And he trusted me based on all those connections that we made before with the Rolling Stone piece, and just knowing that I understood where he came from. We had, like I said, a bunch of things in common. So, you know, the more we talked, the more the chemistry evolved. And, you know, the first interviews were very businesslike. Oh, you know, when were you born? What's your full name? Who are your parents? And after a while, as, you know, I gained more and more of his trust, he started to open up more and more. And all these interviews took place in the wee hours of the morning at his house. So they're all, you know, it's very intimate. You know, they all took place between like 1 in the morning and like sunrise.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a
Some
night
call
bird.
that late night.
No, it's early morning.
Now, he said that this was like the happiest moments of his life, and this was very close to his tragic death. What do you think happened between then and the suicide?
Well, I think that his drug addiction started to really kick in, really got the better of him. It's impossible to overstate what a powerful hold drugs can have on a person. And I think that really got to him. I think that just, you know, the pressures of touring and things like that really got to him. And he had a certifiable mental illness called depression. Yeah. And he had a bad case of it, and it went untreated. And that's, you know, it's really that simple, you know. And I would say right now, if you know anyone who has depression and is not taking care of it, please help them out.
It's very important to do that. Now, what effect do you think Courtney had on Kurt and his relationship, falling in love with her and having a child?
Well, you know, when you watch the film, you really get a sense of why and how Kurt loved Courtney, and that was real. A lot of people try and speculate on what their relationship was, but you know, why and how someone loves someone else is, I think you can't know it. Only the two people who were in it can really know it. But if you watch About a Son, you can see what he felt about her, and you can kind of get the strength of his love for her. And also, you know, she was the mother of his child, and that child, like, whenever Francis came in the room, bing, you know, his face would light up, and his face would not light up very easily. So that, I think that was it. You know, he was in love, and he was a very happy papa.
Now, it's amazing to me. It's been 16 years since Nevermind was released. It's just insane to me. And how do you? It's even impossible to say. I mean, some of our viewers were born 16 years ago and are younger and watching. How do you two tell to a generation the impact of Kurt Cobain's music and life?
Well, in a way, that's why I wanted to make the film. I mean, in addition to knowing that Michael's had these interviews, my teenage nephew was 13 and was starting to get into Nirvana. And when he was talking to me about Kurt, it was clear that the Kurt he saw was someone who was only visible through a haze of drug addiction and you know, conspiracy theories and a controversial widow. And as I was talking to him about why we came to know and like Kurt in the first place, you know, it seems kind of strange, but none of those things were part of the reason why we came to know and like Kurt. And so this movie is really an attempt to pull all of the iconography and all of the haze away from him and have you identify with this really ordinary guy from a Northwest logging town who happened to make some really amazing music and spoke really perceptively about what had happened to his generation in the couple of years before. And I think that that is a timeless story, and you know, also it's about being an outsider too, and I think he will always be that kind of person for many generations to come.
And that's something that a lot of our viewers can identify with. Kurt Cobain, About a Son premieres this week in New York and Los Angeles and opens in theaters around the country this fall. You can pick up the soundtrack. Please do. It's wonderful in stores right now. Thank you so much, gentlemen.